We live? What it? Why are you moving?
I'm fine.
It was like jumping. Yeah, and you got thread on.
Okay.
Jump away.
Assata, autobiography.
It just crawled on your butt.
Mike. All right, now, if anybody watching this, let us know how the audio sound. This is here. I'm gonna zoom in so y'all can see what we doing. We live on Facebook right there. We've been trying to get live on IG. I think I got the connection set up right now. I think I got an idea for it to work. So we live on the IG. Can I tag people? No live viewers. Okay, that's cool. Oh damn, they tell you yo Pete. Okay, I like this. Do live videos stay on Twitter afterwards? Oh, you can put this on the. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know you gotta like put it low or something. Oh damn! Wait a minute, I gotta see something else. It reset while y'all was doing it. I seen. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. What you think? Oh, we on live. Yeah, if you got the thing, you gotta have an attachment for it though. I think. But in the video, in the picture, it did say that you could. I mean, in the picture, it's of three spots. Okay, so anybody that's watching on Twitter, oh yeah, we got one person on Twitter. What's the audio? What's the audio sound like on Twitter? Let me know. Okay, now I'm finna try to get on YouTube. Okay, let's see. We in the game. All right, we are reading Assata, an autobiography. Anybody that's watching this, share this. We live on Twitter, live on Facebook. We finna see if we can get the Instagram live the YouTube live going. All right, I'm clicking create, upload video, go live. I click go live. Now I don't know how charged the laptop is, so some of these things is contingent on the manner in which this laptop go. I know the wind probably blowing on Twitter. Lost connection. Is that? But it's for you or for me?
I think it's you. It's just playing you in a loop.
But on mine is. You are the one. Okay, right now, get set up live stream now. Have a chance. Okay. All right. All right, I'm gonna start reading while we get the YouTube figured out. Okay. I wasn't against communism, but I can't say I was for it either. At first, I viewed it suspiciously, as some kind of white man's concoction until I read works by African revolutionaries and studied the African liberation movements. Revolutionaries in Africa understood that the question of African liberation was not just a question of race, that even if they managed to get rid of the white colonialists, if they didn't rid themselves of the capitalistic economic structure, the white colonialists would simply be replaced by black neo-colonialists. There was not a single liberation movement in Africa that was not fighting for socialism. In fact, there was not a single liberation movement in the whole world that was fighting for capitalism. The whole thing boiled down to a simple equation. Anything that has any kind of value is made, mined, grown, produced, and processed by working people. So why shouldn't working people collectively own that wealth? Why shouldn't working people own and control their own resources? Capitalism meant that rich businessmen owned the wealth, while socialism meant that the people who made the wealth owned it. I got into heated arguments with sisters or brothers who claimed that the oppression of black people was only a question of race. I argue that there were black oppressors as well as white ones. That's why you've got blacks who support Nixon or Reagan or other conservatives. Black folks with money have always tended to support candidates who they believe will protect their financial interest. As far as I was concerned, it didn't take too much brains to figure out that black people are oppressed because of class as well as race, because we are poor and because we are black. It would burn me up every time somebody talked about black people climbing the ladder of success. Anytime you're talking about a ladder, you're talking about a top and a bottom, an upper class and a lower class, a rich class and a poor class. As long as you've got a system with the top and the bottom, black people are always going to wind up at the bottom because we're the easiest to discriminate against. That's why I couldn't see fighting within the system. Both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are controlled by millionaires. They are interested in holding on to the power while I was interested in taking it away. They were interested in supporting fascist dictatorships in South and Central America while I wanted to see them overthrown. They were interested in supporting racist, fascist regimes in Africa while I was interested in seeing them overthrown. They were interested in defeating the Viet Cong, and I was interested in seeing them win their liberation. A poster of the massacre at My Lai, picturing women and children lying clumped together in a heap, their bodies riddled with bullets, hung on my wall as a daily reminder of the brutality in the world. Okay, this book fell. All right, let's see. So again, I always want to continuously be cross-referencing the things that we're reading with things that relate directly to us. So I sort of want to speak on the manner in which he spoke about how you cannot separate class and race in the struggle for liberation for black people. I think that too often and too many times we have as a people and as a community have bought into the idea that if one of us make it, then we all make it, which is something that is understandable, which is something that I felt before, which is something that when something happens and you're black and you get treated like every other black person, or if a black person commit a crime and then every black person get treated as if they're the one who commits the crime, you do get into an all for one, one for all mentality with certain sections of your community. So it's not surprising that when we have somebody who may succeed in making music, or may be really smart and may succeed in going off to college, or may succeed with the clothing line, or succeed in sports, that everybody sort of ties themselves to this individual and thinks that, you know, seeing them make it out of these circumstances means that we all can make it out of these circumstances, and they're seen as a symbol of what you can do if you work hard enough and you try hard enough. But those things aren't, you know, as true as they seem. You know, that's a very limited way to view success in America. Once you start looking deeper, you understand all the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who fell through those cracks, who couldn't reach that same level of success, and not because they didn't have the same capabilities of the person who did, but because the system is set up in a manner in which only individuals can actually succeed and and pull themselves out of their situations. Because if collectives of people, if whole communities of people start pulling themselves out of some of these situations, it will upend the status quo. It will change the country as we know it. And so we have to get to a place where we understand that instead of trying to become the richest black person, or instead of trying to become the CEO of the Chase Bank as a black person, or trying to become the mayor as a black person, we start trying to figure out ways in which those same skill sets that you possess, that could make you become the president of the Chase, or that could make you become the mayor of the city. How can you use those skill sets for the struggle? How can you use those skill sets for black liberation? How can you use those skill sets to make sure that that not just you make it out of your circumstances, but all the people who look like you can make it out of their circumstances, that your children and your grandchildren won't have to deal with being criminalized, even though you may have helped them to become rich and helped them to become more successful, and now maybe they don't have to worry about living in ghettos, but they still have to worry about the fact that the police can kill them because they're black. They still have to worry about the fact that because their name is Jamal or their name is Jermaine, they're less likely to get a job because of what the consciousness of what the society is like. And so we have to start figuring out how we can stop trying to buy into the system, and how we can start trying to destroy this system and create another system. And that starts with understanding that racism and capitalism are intertwined, and we cannot be trying to use capitalism to defeat racism. And that's something that is something that should stick with people deeply. We cannot try to use capitalism to defeat racism. And then let's speak too about Where we at? The class. As long as you got a system. That's why I couldn't see fighting within the system. Both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are controlled by millionaires. They are interested in holding on to their power while I was interested in taking it away. That's very important, and that says a. Hold on, let's go bottom. Okay. I think that's very important for us to dissect too, because that also gets us into a place where we have to stop relegating politics to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party or the Independent Party, and we have to start dissecting politics as the things that go on in our life every day. And so, in the midst of us doing that, we should no longer be finding ourselves tied to the person who's the Democrat or tied to the person who's the Republican. Marilyn Hyde Ross was a Democrat and was persecuting black folks. Jay Hanley is a Democrat. Is a Republican and is persecuting black folks. Tom McNamara is a Democratic mayor, and we might as well have Richard Nixon sitting up in the city hall in the manner in which he's handled the things that's going on here for the last 10 and 11 months. So we have to get past this Democratic and Republican Party concept, and we have to start looking at people as what ideologies are they representing? What type of moral integrity do they have? What type of how transparent are they? Are they willing to hold these institutions accountable? Not if they're a Democrat or if they're a Republican. Stop going down and picking up a ballot and checking off Democrat all the way down the line and Republican all the way down the line. Manhattan Community College had not one course on Puerto Rican history. The Puerto Rican sisters and brothers who knew what was happening became our teachers. I had hung out all my life with Puerto Ricans, and I didn't even know Puerto Rico was a colony. They told us of the long and valiant struggle against the first Spanish colonizers, and then, later, against the U.S. government and about their revolutionary heroes, the Puerto Rican Five: Lolito Lebron, Rafael Miranda, Andres Cordero, Irving Flores, and Oscar Collazo, each of whom has spent more than a quarter of a century behind bars fighting for the independence of Puerto Rico. Once you understand something about the history of a people, their heroes, their hardships, and their sacrifices, it's easier to struggle with them, to support their struggle. For a lot of people in this country, people who live in other places have no faces. And this is why the U.S. government, and this is the way the U.S. government wants it to be. They figure that as long as the people have no faces and the country has no form, Americans will not protest when they send in Marines to wipe them out. What up? What's good? Love you, bro. I bet I'm going to be here. Yeah, be easy out here, bro. Oh, shit. All right, so let's dissect I'm sorry if I was too loud right there. Let's dissect. I want to dissect that paragraph. Not the part where this person's name, this individual's name was LeBron, but that was also very interesting. I ain't never seen that before, besides LeBron. Once you understand something about the history of a people, their heroes, their hardships, and their sacrifices, it's easier to struggle with them, to support their struggle. I think that one sentence delves deeply into what it is that we're out here doing. I think that delves deeply into the importance of dialogue and delves deeply into the importance of conversations, because that is true. You cannot simply just like you cannot simply just be black and expect that, and being black is an ideology. You can't just walk around and say, I'm black. I'm black and I'm proud, and let that be an ideology that you can be black and proud and still be doing things that contribute to the destruction of black people. You can be black and proud and still be buying into a structure and a society that is for the degradation of black people. Just because you are individually black and proud, that is not spread pride to the entire community of black people. And so what we have to do is and that's the same thing for if you're just wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt. Wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt does not put you in a position in which you are now struggling with black people. Watching Queen and Slim or American Skin and crying at the end does not put you in a position in which you are now struggling with black people. Listening to Kendrick Lamar, going to one protest, all of these things, these singularity things do not put you in a position in which you are now struggling with black people. But when you start learning the history of America, when you start learning the history of your family, what has your personal family done? What kind of discriminatory acts have some of your family done? Did you have family that were slaveholders? Do you have family that participated in Jim Crow or Jim Crow justice and lynching of black people? Or do you have family members that were, in the White Citizens Council or in the Ku Klux Klan? You have to address those things about yourself and your history, and then you have to start learning. Damn, the Twitter died. Fuck. But then you have to start. We need a fucking router out in this motherfucker. But then you have to start learning the. Oh yeah, because the hotspot. Oh, the hotspot's still on. No, it just died. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So yeah, that's part of what this is about. This week of reading has taught us. I've learned more about black people in this week of reading. I hope that anybody else who is, or these 4 days of reading so far, I hope that anybody else that is has been watching at home, whether it's been regularly or popping in and out, I hope that you've also learned more about black people. And putting that into practice will help you to be able to struggle with black people, and that is the basis, and that's the starting point, in my opinion, in actually struggling with people, is understanding their history and understanding who they are as a people, and then figuring out where you can fit in that story. And the same thing in this last sentence, and this is why the U.S. government, and this is the way the U.S. government wants it to be. For a lot of people in this country, people who live in other places have no faces. You can take those words out and say different words, and this can say, for a lot of people in Rockford, people who live in other places have no faces, or people who live on the west side have no faces, and that's the truth. And this is the way the U.S. government wants it to be, and that's the way that the city wants it to be. That's why that when they have events, they don't have these events that are done on the west side of the city or done in the more impoverished or the more disenfranchised parts of the city, because they want that to be seen. They want what goes on in those areas to be hidden, to be secretive. So that way, when the police shoot somebody, or when somebody gets wrongfully accused or wrongfully convicted, or when someone starts screaming about the injustices that's over there, the people that's on the other side of the river feel like that's something that's foreign to them. They feel like those people are foreign to them. Their children haven't went to school with those people. They haven't grown up with those people. So they feel like the struggles and the issues that those people are facing are something that are not related to them, that are not connected to them. And those things are done purposeful. Whether they're done purposeful consciously or subconsciously is irrelevant. They're still done purposeful. They figure as long as the people have no faces and the country has no form, Americans will not protest when they send in Marines to wipe them out. And it's the same way here. As long as the people have no faces, as long as the things that go on over there in the city are criminalized, and the people who live over on the other side of the city are criminalized and stigmatized, when the police come and kill them, nobody will protest about it. When the police come and shoot them down or gun them down or falsely arrest them, nobody will protest about it, because they feel removed from those people. And so we have to start doing the job of a community of connecting those people and finding those forms of intersectionality, and finding how we can bring the kid that lives in an affluent neighborhood and the kid that's growing up in an impoverished neighborhood together, and show them that they have more commonalities than they may have differences, and that we have to start. We're going to need both sides in this fight for liberation. Okay. I have begun to think of myself as a socialist, but I cannot in any way see myself joining any of the socialist groups I came in contact with. I love to listen to them, learn from them, and argue with them, but there was no way in the world I could see myself becoming a member. For one thing, I could not stand the condescending, paternalistic attitudes of some of the white people in those groups. Some of the older members thought that because they had been in the struggle for socialism for a long time, they knew all the answers to the problems of black people and all the aspects of the black liberation struggle. I couldn't relate to the idea of the great white father on earth any more than I could relate to the great white father up in the sky. I was willing and ready to learn everything I could learn from them, but I damn sure was not ready to accept them as leaders of the black liberation struggle. A few thought that they had a monopoly on Marx and acted like the only excerpts in the world on socialism came from Europe. In many instances, they downgraded the theoretical and practical contributions of third world revolutionaries like Fidel Castro, Ho Chi Minh, Agustino Neto, and other leaders of liberation movements in the third world. Damn, that's crazy, these names. Damn. I'm sorry. How he wearing this suit right now? How is he wearing this suit? He ain't hot. All right, my fault. This guy got on a suit. It's hot. Another thing that went against my grain was the arrogance and the dogmatism I encountered in some of these groups. A member of one group told me that if I was really concerned about the liberation of black people, I should quit school and get a job in a factory. That if I wanted to get rid of the system, I would have to work at a factory and organize the workers. When I asked him why he wasn't working in the factory and organizing the workers, he told me that he was staying in school in order to organize the students. I told him I was working to organize the students too, and that I felt perfectly certain that the workers could organize themselves without any college students doing it for them. Some of these groups would come up with the abstract, intellectual theories, totally devoid of practical application, and swear they had the answers to the problems of the world. They attacked the Vietnamese for participating in the Paris peace talks, claiming that by negotiating, the Viet Cong were selling out to the U.S. I think they got insulted when I asked them how a group of flabby white boys who couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag had the nerve to think they could tell the Vietnamese people how to run their show. Arrogance was one of the key factors that kept the white left so factionalized. Facts. I felt that instead of fighting together against a common enemy, they wasted time quarreling with each other about who had the right line. Although I respected the work and political positions of many groups on the left, I felt it was necessary for black people to come together to organize our own structures and our own revolutionary political party. Friendship is based on respect. As long as much of the white left saw their role as organizing, educating, recruiting, and directing black revolutionaries, I could not see how any real friendship could occur. I felt, and still feel, that it is necessary for black revolutionaries to come together, analyze our history, our present condition, and to define ourselves and our struggle. Black self-determination is a basic right, and if we do not have... Black self-determination is a basic right, and if we do not have the right to determine our destinies, then who does? I believe that to gain our liberation, we must come from the position of power and unity, and that a black revolutionary party led by black revolutionary leaders is essential. I believe in uniting with white revolutionaries to fight against the common enemy, but I was convinced that it had to be on the basis of power and unity rather than from weakness and unity at any cost. To my mama, who has swallowed the American dream and choked on it. To my mama, whose dreams have fought each other and died, who sees but cannot bear to see, a volcano eating its own lava. To my mama, who couldn't turn hell into paradise and blamed herself, who has always seen, reflected in her mirror, an ugly duckling. Fuck. Damn, I fucked it up. Let me try that again. Damn, I hate to fuck up this poem. This shit seems like it's kind of hot. Damn, this is a long poem. I'm gonna try to do it again. To my mama, who has swallowed the American dream and choked on it. To my mama, whose dreams have fought each other and died, who sees but cannot bear to see, a volcano eating its own lava. To my mama, who couldn't turn hell into paradise and blamed herself, who has always seen, reflected in her mirror, an ugly duckling. To my mama, who makes no demands of anyone because she don't think she can afford to, who thinks her money talks louder than her womanhood. To my butch femme mama, who has always taken care of business, who has never drifted hazily to sleep thinking he will take care of it, who has schemed so much she sometimes schemes against herself. To my sweet, shy mama, who is uneasy with people because she don't know how to be phony and is afraid to be real, who has longed for sculpture gardens, whose plotted plant dies slowly on the windowsill. We have all been infected with the sickness that can be traced back to the auction block. You must not feel guilty for what has been done to us. Only the strong go crazy, the weak just go along. And what I thought was cruelty, I understand was fear. That hands stronger than yours and wider than yours would strangle my young life into oblivion. Mama, I am proud of you. I look at you and see the strength of our people. I have seen you struggle in the dark. The world beating on your back, dragging your catch back to our den, pulling your pots and pans out to cook it. A mop in one hand, a pencil in the other, marking up my homework with your love. The injured have no blame. Let it fall on those who injure. Leave the past behind where it belongs and come with me toward tomorrow. I love you, mommy, because you are beautiful, and I am life that springs from you. Part tree, part weed, part flower. My roots run deep. I have been nourished well. I am at school, chapter 13. Okay, chapter 13. This is Assata and autobiography. We on day 4 of the ongoing teaching and say their name square. Okay, we're gonna do a speech. 14, 95. I think it may be a speech, right? Yeah, we said a speech. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna take a pause. We don't want to run through it too quick. We're real close to the end of this, so we want to make sure that we got some time to get through this today. So we're gonna play a speech. We got a whole playlist loaded up. Stay tuned. Oof. Oh, I hope that wasn't too loud. My fault, y'all. Oh, my fault. I know that's loud. Oh, that's probably loud. I'm sorry. You picked a good day to be outside. Yeah, nice day.
Power on.
I'm following it. Oh no, I was supposed to say that on the mic. Oops. Man, listen, man. That's how people. That's how black folks talk sometimes. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Oh no, I was gonna grab that one to play the speech. Okay, that was. Thanks, you too, man. It's nice meeting you. We'll see you again. What? Okay. Finna get a speech queued. Speech queued up. Just gotta get the Bluetooth connected real quick. Alright,
Bluetooth pairing.
Yeah. Finna play a speech. Hey, T-Pain. Okay. Xander. Blacklist. Okay, Blacklist. Oh, fuck. That's good. Oh, shit.
Bluetooth pairing. Bluetooth connected.
Alright, my fault, y'all. Alright, we got the Bluetooth connected. I don't know if is it in Assata? I don't know if we got an Assata speech or not. Okay, we got an interview. This wasn't a... Here we go. Assata Shakur in Cuba. Assata Shakur in Havana.
I was imprisoned. I was shot with my hands in the air. I was accused of a wide variety of crimes, all of which, with the exception of the murder of a New Jersey state trooper, I was acquitted. I was tried for the murder of a New Jersey state trooper by an all-white jury in a highly prejudiced county where something like 70% of those polled already believed I was guilty. I was tried in the press for years. I was subsequently convicted. I was sentenced to life, plus 30 years in prison, plus 30 years because I would not stand up for the judge. I spent 6.5 years in prison. 2 of those 6.5 years I spent in solitary confinement in men's prisons, which was against New Jersey law, but nevertheless, that's where I was sent, and that's where I spent 2 years. And I subsequently escaped. I came to Cuba in 1984. I've been here ever since. I have written one book, which is an autobiography. I'm now working on another book, which is about the ideological development of the Black liberation movement in the United States. And so I'd like to just open up the floor for people's questions, whether they're about Cuba, whether they're about me, whether they're about whatever. Is
your book available?
Yes, it is. It's published by Lawrence Hill. It's available in most leftist kind of bookstores in the United States, African American bookstores, and available in England, and it's published in several other languages now. So.
Are the people in the States your sympathizers, supporters who are still working on the case? And if so, have they gotten...
My supporters are still...
working on your still working on it. Are the supporters in the States still working on using Freedom of Information Act to get access to police files or anything of that sort?
Okay. There are so many political prisoners, approximately 100, and resources are very thin, and there are not that many resources, so that most of the effort of people who supported me is now directed toward supporting other political prisoners. And like there have been, for example, if I had not escaped, I would next year be in prison. It would be 20 years. Sundia Akoli, who was arrested with me, who was on the case with me, has been in prison almost 20 years. It's been 19 years. There are other political prisoners who have been in prison for 20 years, others 21, and others 22 years. For example, Jerome Pratt will soon be in prison 22 years, and even though there's an enormous amount of evidence pointing to the fact that A, he was framed, B, the government knows he was framed, is completely innocent. There have been special given by, what is that program, 60 Minutes, He's been on 60 Minutes. Agents, FBI agents have come forward and said that they know that he is innocent, that he was in fact framed by the government. The FBI has made statements saying that he was supposed to have been, and now that there are many people who have testified that he was at a meeting of the Black Panther Party during the time when the crime was supposedly committed miles and miles away, more than 500 miles away. And the FBI says that even though he was under day-to-day surveillance, they started keeping records the day after the event, and those other records disappeared. So we're dealing with blatant violations of not only people's human rights, but of the civil rights, and people are very unaware in the United States of the fact that A, that they are political prisoners, and B, that these political prisoners have been in prison basically since the early 70s, some of them since the late 60s. And I mean, it's criminal that they are there, and part of the reason that I believe that they are still there and that there's so little work being done around political prisoners is A, because the government still maintains a kind of COINTEL program, which part of that COINTEL program under another name is dedicated to minimizing and criminalizing the Black liberation movement, African people, and so that within the left is a kind of idea that these people must have been done something, or they're infantile leftists who are not worthy of being supported, and that these people are really not political priorities. But my question is, if we accept the government's definition of who people who struggle are, then we are in fact negating the legitimacy of the Puerto Rican liberation struggle, of the Black liberation movement, and of those anti-imperialists who have shown solidarity with oppressed people in the United States, of those people who, the people are in prison for being part of the anti-nuclear movement, for being activists in all segments of the movement. So it's not just one segment of the movement that is represented in terms of political prisoners. In my case, getting back to your question, I think that given the current administration, given the right-wing nature of the U.S. government, which seems to be moving closer and closer to fascism, there is very little hope that any court will give me justice. And I think that the same applies to other people who have been victimized by the government. I think that the only way that most political prisoners will be freed is that there is a massive popular movement which demands amnesty for all of those political prisoners. And I think that in my case, I would fall under that amnesty act, but I think that, it would take a great deal of massive action to be able to do that. I don't know if I answered your question.
I'm curious about how you feel right now as an exile. I would guess, but please tell me if I'm wrong, that as an African American you would feel extremely alienated from a white-dominated society, white supremacist society, and then on the other hand, you're living in exile, and I've known many people.
I don't feel any great longing to return. I miss, on real terms, I miss African American culture. I miss friends, family, and that's very real, and that's a kind of gap in my life. But on the other hand, adopting to Cuba, well, it hasn't been easy. I've had to learn another language, and you spend the first 3 or 4 years learning another language feeling like an idiot because you really can't communicate, and you communicate at such a low level. People say, they kind of feel an idiot because your conversation is kind of on an idiotic level at first. So, I mean, the language was a difficult thing to adapt to, but in terms of adapting to Cuba, it wasn't so hard because it was like, in my life, the first time that I've ever been in agreement with a government that I was in. It was the first time I've ever liked a president, I've ever listened to political speeches intently. It was the first time I've ever lived in a society that was at peace with itself. I mean, that I felt free to walk down the street, that I felt, because I'm weird. If I'm riding maybe 3 o'clock, I get the urge to take a walk. And I can do that here. I feel my neighbors look out for me. I feel part of a community. And this is a new experience for me. It's been really a very healing experience for me, actually, because being an activist in the movement, being a target by the FBI, et cetera, being in prison, all of those things are harmful things. They do things to your mind, they do things to your body, they do things to your spirit. And when I came to Cuba, I, for the first time, could relax enough to realize the devastating effect of what 30-some years had meant to me growing up and living in a society that was totally hostile to me as a human being, where I had to always look out for myself, always had to watch my back, always had to look over my shoulder, always had to be alert, always had to watch my pocketbook, look around. This place for me has been a place where I learned to relax, where I learned to trust people, where I learned, and not to say I just go around trusting everybody, based on nothing, but where my capability to trust other people and to reach out to other people has gone to another level, because I think that people don't realize the terrible amount of stress that is a real part of the day-to-day living in the United States, and don't realize that you're constantly, especially if you live in African American communities, your life is constantly, maybe not on the line, but it's so close to the line that you feel it. You're aware of it. You know that if you walk down a wrong street one day and the siren, you don't realize that there's a siren, and you don't look at someone running and you don't duck fast enough, that might be you. It might be over, and that was one part that was wonderful. The other part was my daughter. I have a daughter that's 17, she's soon to be 18, and she was born when I was in prison, and the first time we were together, we were able to form a real mother-daughter, relationship was here in Cuba, and it was very painful for her, painful for me, because we didn't know each other, and even though she knew it wasn't my fault that I wasn't with her, she was angry, you left me, and it was normal, and we worked it through, we formed a very close relationship. And the Cuban people were so supportive and so understanding of every aspect of that. The teacher, the first year she spoke 9 words of Spanish. And the teacher knew that it would be very devastating for her to fail. So, he would come to the house every day, every other day, give her special lessons. People were just so wonderful. In every single way, whether it was from finding a dancing class, from the neighbors teaching her the Cuban dances. They were just great. And so we opened up, and we were able to be a family, and that was, I think, a very beautiful part of my life, a very painful part of my life also, but we came through it, and she's doing great. She did wonderful in schools here, and so that was another part of my adjusting process in Cuba, and part that of the many things that helped me to be a much more complete human being, a much more open human being.
The other day when we were talking, you thought pressures of living in the United States and organizing there would take on organization, and you spoke of the need for more of an understanding of the social psychology of organizations and the way people interact. And that's something that many people in the United States have been trying to address too, about the 60s and the interaction in the different groups. I was wondering if you could develop that a bit.
Okay. People's political principles and people's personal principles are very closely interrelated and interconnected. And I think that the kind of style of struggling that I was exposed to, and everybody else, most people were exposed to in the 60s, was a kind of, we're revolutionaries, we must sacrifice, struggle, die if necessary, give our lives for the revolution. But in terms of knowing each other, in terms of forming supportive relationships with each other, in terms of just talking about our families, talking about our backgrounds, talking about our personal problems, that was kind of shoved to the background. People, you go to the meeting, you talk about whatever it is, and you go, and I have met people that I haven't seen like 20 years, and then they come to Cuba and say, we worked together for years, and I never really knew anything about you, and you never really knew anything about me, and it seems to me that if we're working for social change, that it's not just the structural, systematic, economic structure that we have to struggle to change. I think that people who are subjected to extreme oppression, to extreme racism, to extreme sexism, to all kinds of degrading situations, all kinds of humiliating, hostile situations, have to be affected by that. That's real. If you slap me, I feel it. If you insult me on a daily basis, I feel it. And I think that part of the struggle of oppressed people is, number one, forming more human relationships, and that we have to be able to heal as well as struggle, because it's not just enough to fight to tear down the old oppressive systems, but at the same time we have to be building new ways of relating, new values that are prettier. One of the things that I found with leftists is like I would bring someone, I'll give you a story. A friend of mine, when I joined the Black Panther Party, she wasn't a friend, but she was the one who took me around and we became friendly. She showed me how to sell papers, she showed me the ropes. And so it was like really cold. I said, it's just too cold to stand out here and sell these pamper papers and nobody's here, so let's go to this coffee shop and get some coffee. So we was in the place drinking tea. And there were just some people there. We got into a normal conversation, and she started to talk rhetoric. And the people didn't know what she was saying. The Black Panther Party, the vanguard of the people. And people didn't know what the vanguard was. They didn't know what the lumpen proletariat was. They didn't know what the lumpen proletariat. And she turned those people off so fast. She was like somebody that dropped right out from the moon. People could not relate to the language she was talking. They couldn't relate to the tone of voice that she was using. They couldn't relate to the arrogance that just poured out of every sentence. And it was, a moment that was so negative that had just been so pleasant, and in 1 second it turned into something totally negative. So I think that in my life, I have seen that repeated in many different ways. You bring people to a political organization, they're energetic, they're angry, they're just souped up. They want to do things, they want to work, they want to struggle, but then you put them into this kind of political never land with people talking in rhetoric, in codes, in words that normal people don't talk, dealing with them in a totally human, indifferent way. I don't care if you didn't sleep last night. I don't care if you have a test on Monday. I don't care if your kids have no babysitter. That is not my problem. And I don't see how you can build a new society based on that kind of human interrelationship, nor do I see how you can build a strong revolutionary movement based on those kinds of interrelationships. So I do think that changing how we deal with each other and healing is a very important way, an important area of struggle. I think that in the history of the world revolutionary movement, we have often followed European models and to the exclusion of other models of struggle. And I think that one of the things that needs to be done is that the old concepts that we have all the formulas, that all the areas of struggle are lined up, and that revolution is like this recipe that you just have to follow. Well, all of that people kind of have come to the realization that no longer works. But I think that when you look at how stagnated the social sciences have been, sociology, I'm talking about revolutionary social sciences, psychology, sociology, anthropology, that these have all been areas that in many of the socialist countries that have not been developed to any great degree, or they have simply copied models that have been at the forefront in the Western context. So I think that when I talk about healing and when I talk about the social sciences, because I don't see psychology as just belonging to professional psychology. I don't see healing as just belonging to a medical context. I see healing as being a process of community. I see healing as there must be, people have to rediscover traditional ways of healing that exist in many different societies and combine those traditional ways of healing and traditional ways of psychological adjustment with more Western standard kinds of ways of changing people's psychology, of healing. Because I think that part of what is wrong is that in many countries there is this total alienation. In many communities, people have no community. There are no doors that they can open, so you see these people who are so traumatized that they're afraid to talk to anybody, afraid to look anybody in the eye just because of the level of violence. And so that alienation is such a real process that I don't see how we can struggle unless we really deal with that on a political level and on a personal level. I think that it is unrealistic to think that there's not going to be anger, that there's not going to be antagonism, that there is not going to be struggle when white folks, black folks, Latinos work together, whether it's in the same organization or out of the same organization. I would be crazy if I said that I am not angry about racism. I would be crazy if I said that I were not affected by racism. In a racist society, in a society that is controlled by white supremacy, then the reality of that is all people who live in that society are affected by it. I can't really, it would be crazy for me to say that I have lived in a society for 30-something years. I'm 46 now, but I'm talking about the years that I lived in the United States. Without incorporating feelings of inferiority. I was not responsible for those feelings of inferiority, but they came from every aspect. I had to be affected by them. I had to have internalized them to some degree. Part of my healing process is struggling against them. And I, at this stage, after being a political activist all my life, after being, a person who has consciously tried to struggle against those feelings, I cannot say that struggle is over. I must struggle against all of the feelings of inferiority, of inadequacy that the society has heaped on me as an African and as a woman. The same is true for white people. Now, I think it's crazy for white people to say I have lived in a white society that is where white supremacy is the religion, is official and unofficial, is the policy of the government, is the policy of the president, is in all the textbooks, is in all the movies, is in all the billboards. And say, I ain't been affected by that. That's why. That is totally untrue. So we have to admit that we have all grown up only in the same world that has been controlled by white supremacy, Eurocentrism. That is a reality. What we both have to do is work against that on a personal level and on a political level, and to be honest about it. I would be crazy if I said that but when I was in prison, one of the guards, as she was tearing up my cell, throwing my clothes down, stepping on them, smashing them, and said, "You don't like white people, do you?" And why in the world do you think I should like white people? What is it? There might be individual white people that I do in fact like because of my experiences with them personally. But if you're going to ask me overall, do I like white people, then I would have to say my experience with white people in the United States on an overall general level has not been a friendly face, a helpful hand, an open arm. That has not been my experience. So if I were to negate that reality and pretend that I had another reality, then I would be, in fact, sick, crazy. It would be a form of denial. So I think that the way that we work together, the way that we deal with each other, the way that we try to come to some unity is to say, put the cards on the table. To say, let's struggle together. Let's take principled positions. And then after we do a good job of that, after we both work on what our education has been, and that I think is a lifelong process. I don't think that you can reach a point and say, well, I'm not racist, I'm not affected by racism, I'm not affected by white supremacy. Because I think that is to say I am not affected by the environment. I don't think that's a Marxist position.
It's about race relations in Cuba and how you've worked through some of the issues that you've just discussed in the U.S. context, and whether you see any significant changes in race relations over this 8 years that you've been here.
Well, I'm going to say first of all that I'm never satisfied. If you ask me if I am satisfied at the speed and at the level that solving the race problem and the conditions of Africans on this earth, it is never fast enough for me. It is never enough for me. Having said that, let me talk about Cuba. I think that when I first came to Cuba, people were much more, or at least I felt that people were much more hesitant about dealing with the question of race relations without about dealing with problems in Cuba, and about dealing with the history of race relations in Cuba. I felt that people were much more defensive, and that it was that kind of, we're all Cubans. After the, not this last Congress, I think it was the third Congress, which happened shortly after I came here, that changed somewhat because Fidel talked about the fact that it was important to deal with race. It was important that the number of people who are in powerful positions should reflect the composition of the population. I feel, and I felt at that time, that Cuba was taking important steps in changing that, giving Afro-Cuban or African-Cuban culture, religion, respect that it had not given before. I think that African Cubans have changed somewhat and become more identified with Africa. And I also think that in this particular time, although it's far from being perfect, I think that there's a real interest in dealing with Africa, Asia, and Latin America in a whole other context in terms of studying the ideological input of African, Asians, and Latin Americans. I think that there is a kind of barefoot, for lack of other words, socialist kind of movement that is very young, I think, but that is moving up, that really wants to focus on a third world ideological position, that really wants to focus in on the history of Latin America, the history of Africa, the history of Asia in a much more profound way, and I see that as positive. I do not think that it is realistic to think that in 30-something years all of the problems that existed in a society that was based on slave labor for hundreds of years can be solved. I believe that the government has and the party have a absolute commitment to eradicating racism. I also feel that in this special period that has taken a back burner to survival in terms of, and I think that the struggles of women, many other struggles, even though they're important and interrelated, have been put on the back burner, and now the key issue is for the revolution to survive. So, I don't know if I answered all of your question, but that's kind of a woman's kind.
Yeah, that just reminded me that we were talking the other day about a little bit about how you felt about your daughter being here and some of the roles for boys and girls and gender issues, and so I just wondered if you could say a little bit about the difference between sexism or relations between men and women here and in the States, and what your experience has been like about the differences.
Well, my daughter she's more grown up now, but she was, when she came to Cuba, this like athletic New York kid that plays handball, that's used to punch ball, that kind of stuff. And it was, very difficult because my childhood was very alive and well. And so, like we would look outside of our window and the boys would be playing basketball and volleyball and what they call four corners, which is like a version of punch bowl. And there would be no girls. Girls would be inside doing their homework. And so it was very frustrating for her in that sense to make an adjustment. Well, she became involved in I took her to the stadium where they had a practice for girls, and she was like doing track and field. But she didn't like that so much. But I mean, it was only, I mean, there were great athletes in terms of girls, but it was just like mostly in the sports schools or programs that were geared to developing athletes that would, compete, not just in recreational sports. Because boys in Cuba are much more into recreational sports than girls. And there's still kind of attitude where girls stay in the house, where girls are not that physical. And like we would, a couple of times, I would, like one time I actually had to go to school because, she came home from school one day, she was in 6th grade, and I said, well, what did you do? We had gym. So I said, what did you do? Well, we ate bread. I said, well, you ate bread? You ate bread. Well, the boys played baseball and we ate bread. I went to the school and I said, look, bread eating is not a sport. I would like my daughter to, be physically developed, as well as mentally developed, and I believe that's one of the principles of integral development in socialism. So would you please put that into practice? And I don't mean, And so finally the teacher understood and we got it together, and there was no more incidents of bread eating at gym time. But I mean, it's a struggle, and I think that women have to struggle really hard within the revolution to change the day-to-day practice, because the family code is real, it exists. When the men in Cuba, they get married, they swear up and down they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and they get home and they, would you please get me a beer? And women have to struggle because Cuban women, for me, are the strongest, most capable human beings probably on the face of the earth. I mean, they work, they do guard duty, they are activists in the CDR, they're activists in the Federation, they do, they're responsible basically for the day-to-day care of children, they're responsible for cooking, cleaning, etc. Like the men on my block, you see them there across the street playing dominoes, and sometimes I just make them feel bad, they say, oh, don't come here and talk bad about them. But, it's really, women have really got to struggle because, and under this special period it's worse because the lines are longer, it takes longer to wait for the bus. And it's a huge amount of work that women do. And I think that women are responding and are really, the situation itself is forcing women to struggle in ways that they have never struggled before. My neighbor, for the first time, she came over to me, she said, I told him he got to go to the store himself. I am not a slave. He can, she went off, and I had never seen her go off like that, but she sure enough went off, and he sure enough went to the store. But I mean, the macho culture that the revolution inherited is very deeply embedded, and I believe it's going to take a great deal of struggle and solidarity and unity between women to get rid of it. But then I also want to put that in a historical context, because like I've talked to women from the Federation, and when I came down here, it was like, what is this? Like there was International Day of Women, And it was like, queens for a day. They would bring us the trays, and they had little flowers on the trays. And I said, well, where's the militancy? Where's the, And, I couldn't really understand the Federation. I couldn't understand the movement of women until people started to explain to me the reality of where they came from. I mean, women who were activists in the Federation at the beginning had to go and literally beg people to let women work in the street. They couldn't talk about equality. They had to talk first about men helping women, because that was the objective reality where they were. And so that it was a process that they had to go from one step to step 2 to step 3. And that, people from the U.S. and developed capitalist countries think, that their situation can be just transferred to other countries just mechanically, and that other people can be at the same level of consciousness and deal with the same kinds of ways of struggling. But I had a very good friend who was studying here from Ethiopia, and she said, she was in the women's caucus, and she said, I wake up sometime and I really find my face wet, and I find I've been crying. She said, because I know we made some very serious mistakes when we first started. She said, I would invite women to meetings, and I would invite a male speaker in a room full of women. And because of just those meetings, women were killed. Their husbands killed them for being in a room with another man. Those were the conditions that she had to struggle under, and that was the objective reality that she was dealing with. And so I learned in Cuba from just talking to women from so many different experiences, the levels of machismo in the world, and that each struggle has to be dealt with based on where it is, and using the cultures, using the reality not of European models, but using the homegrown stuff to begin to take the movement to a higher level. And that was a very important lesson for me to learn, so that I would be able to appreciate other people's struggles, not from my point of view and not from the things that shape my consciousness, but from their consciousness. And so I've learned a lot here, not just from Cubans, but from many people that I have met here, who have explained to me realities that I would have never understood about the third world and about what struggling in other conditions means. And it's so easy, we often think that, our reality is the same as other people's, only they're poor, but that's a crazy way to look at other people's struggles. I think that we have to become much more sensitive to the objective conditions that other people are dealing with, and to the strengths that other people have, because I also have found that I've met people who come from African villages who, we might go there and say, well, that village is primitive, but the people who are there seem to me so much more sophisticated in human ways of dealing with each other, have obtained so much more in terms of how they interrelate, of how they keep promises, and of how they relate to the society. In some African societies, for example, lying is a crime, punished not by prison but by go away. You want to lie, we don't want to live with you. You would please go somewhere else, because we really cannot deal with that, and we cannot trust you, so that when you are ready to come home, we will make a ceremony for you. But we will not live with you as you are. And so that I have learned also that there's much to be learned from the cultures of other people, much to be learned from the history of other people. And I think that when you begin to respect the achievements, historical achievements of many people, we will have learned a lot. And I think that it's very important that we focus on many of the things that we have not studied and have not delved into when we look for models of how to create a better society, because I think there are many lessons to be learned that are not in Marx, Lenin, etc., but that come from the traditional ways of living of third world people. And I think that that is an area that has been sorely neglected.
I'm curious about how the news that you get from the United States, how Cuban media presents it, particularly if you could perhaps touch upon the coverage of the events that followed the acquittal of the 4 white policemen who beat Mr. Rodney King, and how that, I guess I'm particularly interested in what you see as the strengths and if there are any weaknesses in the way in which Cuban media present information about that hearing.
In terms of Rodney King, for example, the tape of Rodney King being beaten was shown in Cuba several times. Almost all Cubans saw that on the news. And most Cubans were shocked that there was an acquittal. That was, of course, the news was dealt with on the normal television, and then they dedicated several programs just dealing with the verdict and dealing with the reality of police brutality and repression in the United States. They also, there was an act of solidarity with our movement, to which I was invited and I spoke, by OSPAL. That is a committee in solidarity with Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And the response was overwhelming. People were really indignant and were in one way relieved that it was naked, because it's very difficult for like young people who look at all movies, who look at these high school movies, and they have the high school kids running around in these convertibles, and they live in these perfect houses with these perfectly manicured lawns, and and they open the door into their TV movie rooms, and they have all these wonderful posters and all this electrical equipment and all this stuff. So I think that many parents and many adults were like just grateful that that it was exposed, that it was naked, that the racism was exposed, so they could deal with these issues. In terms of news coverage in general, I think that it could be much better, but I think that they're dealing with a hell of a difficult job, because in the first place, there's a big problem with paper. So many of the magazines that dealt with in-depth analysis of things are not being published. The amount of time that TV is being aired has been greatly reduced because of the problem with energy. And so that the amount of coverage, that in-depth coverage that they can give to any news is limited. So I think that that's a problem. I also think that Cuban people are very sophisticated in that they are very much capable of differentiating between the U.S. people and the U.S. government, and they don't confuse the two, which I think is important. And I think it's a result of the way in which they covered the U.S. historically. I don't know if I answered all of your question.
On that same line, then Radio Marti, what is the effect of that?
I don't know. I mean, I really do not know how much of an effect Radio Marti has, because, I mean, I know some people listen to it. Some people listen to it with total skepticism. Other people listen to it with total gullibility. And other people listen to it somewhere in between. Other people don't listen to it at all. But I really do not know and have no way of knowing how many people, how effective or ineffective it is.
Could you address the growth of the Cuban exile community in Miami and the rest of the United States in terms of increasing inequality in Cuba and attacking the moral foundations of the revolution?
In terms of the growing inequality?
In terms of sending goods and money back, that type of thing.
Can I address the...
Yeah, you see now that different groups that used to be really poor now have changed, and that this support from outside in relationship to the revolution now are beginning to attack the moral foundations themselves.
To be honest, I don't know too much about what is going on in relation, in the exile community in the U.S. you're talking about, right? I really don't know a lot, and I don't want to just give you a silly answer, so I'll just pass on that, because I really can't give you any in-depth answer, and I don't feel that I'm capable of giving you a solid answer. And Lenin were both brilliant people, angles, and made contributions to what I hope in the future will be revolutionary political science or scientific socialism. But I think that it is pure idealism to think that the thinking of a small group of people who lived in a specific time frame can be the totality of what is a scientific revolutionary way for analyzing existing capitalism and for constructing future models of socialism. I think that, what I see right now is that revolutionary social science is in its very primitive stage. If we look at, if someone thousands of years from now would give a name to what has happened over the past 80 years in terms of the communist movement, the socialist movement, they would probably call it the pre-primitive phase of socialism. I don't think that the ideological input can come from such a narrow base and be a guide for world revolutionary struggle. I think that it's kind of like someone who is a biologist being a Darwinist, or someone who is a physicist being an Einsteinist, it's a very limited approach to the growth of a science that is out of the reality of that we're dealing with in its very infancy. I think that the approaches to what we call now Marxism-Leninism have been to recite rather than to analyze the words and the contribution of Marx and Lenin in a more broadening sense and constantly increasing the input of other thinkers, of other revolutionary experiences. I think that people have dealt with it with a kind of religious style and with a kind of, like the Bible. These were the only books where you can find truth. I think that there's no question that they made tremendous contributions, but I think that for Marxism, Leninism to become a universal revolutionary science must have a way to grow, a systematic way to grow, because if a science does not in fact grow, then it is stuck at the point of dogma. I think that if it does not reflect the experiences and the intellectual, ideological, practical input from a worldwide experience, then it cannot claim to be a universal revolutionary science. So although I think that they make great contributions, but there is so much room for growth and so many things that have not been developed that need to be developed. I think that we would be kidding ourselves to say that this is, a complete integral way of looking at the world. I think it's just a beginning, and it reflects a very small step in what needs to be leaps and bounds. And you want it's up to y'all. I support everyone. We can.
There are over 12,000 deserters and people who want to AWOL.
Hubo 12.000 sectores.
And who applied for Congress resistance.
Y gente que trataron de apagar esto.
And over 80% of them were people of color.
Y 80% de esa gente son personas de color.
Which in my view is why the two main factions in the movement did not support it.
En mi punto de vista, porque explica por qué las dos grandes facciones
The resistors in any meaningful way.
que resisten en una forma
They did
significativa.
not raise that as issues throughout the whole war.
Y entonces suplicaron una serie de cuestiones, plantearon una serie de cuestiones durante toda la guerra.
We had whole platoons deserting in New Orleans and elsewhere of black people.
Hubo pelotones enteros desertando en New Orleans y otras ciudades.
And this is very different from during the Vietnam War.
Y esto es muy diferente como a lo que pasó en la guerra de Vietnam.
And so the response of the white peace establishment was different.
Entonces, la respuesta al establecimiento de la paz por los blancos fue diferente.
But at the same time, we're also criticized for being in the service when that's the only economic, for many feel that's the only economic way of survival.
Pero también por otro lado se nos critica por estar en el servicio militar cuando esta es una de las pocas formas que hay de sobrevivir.
And also, like many African Americans, although they were opposed to war, they had the yellow ribbons because they had so many families that were in the service.
Esta es la posición porque muchos norteamericanos usaron una banda amarilla que significaba solidaridad porque estaban en la guerra, porque ellos tienen muchas familias y estaban fuertes en esa guerra.
It was very common to see African Americans wearing a peace button and the yellow ribbon.
Entonces era también común ver a los norteamericanos usando un botón de paz, un símbolo de paz y un símbolo de que era esta banda amarilla. O sea, usaban las dos cosas.
And one of the ways in which white supremacy works in the States in terms of the military occupation and intervention.
Una de las formas en que
la supremacía blanca trabaja cuando vemos la cuestión de las actuaciones militares.
If the dominant population perceives the fighters to be the ground troops, mostly black or Latino or Native American.
Es que ven que los que están en combate directo, o sea, las tropas de infantería sean fundamentalmente negros, latinos.
And those that they were fighting against or invading were also seen as Arab or Latin Americans or African people.
Y estas aprendes que ellos están invadiendo también se ven, que son afroamericanos, son latinos, también son personas que se ven.
But it disconnects because it does not identify with those people as being fully human or equal to each other.
Entonces eso se desconecta, porque no identifica a estas personas como seres como que sean totalmente humanos, totalmente blancos.
So if you were to mobilize against U.S. intervention,
entonces si nos movilizáramos en contra de la intervención norteamericana,
you would have to be able to mobilize against white people.
Será capaces, serían entonces capaces de movilizarse y hacer una crítica acerca de la contra de la izquierda.
As a matter of fact, many whites on the left,
o sea, muchos blancos en la izquierda,
use the third world,
usan el tercer mundo,
in particular Cuba,
y particularmente Cuba,
as a surrogate,
como
as a substitute for addressing the domestic third world in the United States.
Para dirigirse al tercer mundo nacional dentro de Estados Unidos.
As a matter of fact, they don't even address the Puerto Ricans, the Chicanos, the African Americans, the indigenous people, but they will be supporters of Cuba and Nicaragua and Vietnam.
No solo en contra de las minorías puertorriqueños y los hispanos, sino también en contra de los que apoyan a casos como la de Cuba, la de Nicaragua, la de Vietnam.
And so they come back as experts.
Para discusión o para establecer un punto de
We can
partida.
use that as a basis for or starting point for discussion.
Ayer hemos estado debatiendo cuestiones que tienen que ver con el hecho de que en Cuba, por primera vez en la historia de las sociedades multirraciales, fue posible eliminar el racismo que yo he dado en llamar institucionalizado.
Cuba had the possibility of eliminating that kind of racism, which I call institutionalized racism.
O racismo de tipo estructural.
Or
en el eje horizontal de las relaciones raciales.
I was saying yesterday that on the horizontal axis of racial relations.
En el eje de las relaciones interpersonales.
I refer to the interpersonal relations.
Todavía existe en Cuba el fenómeno del prejuicio.
We still have that phenomenon of prejudice in Cuba.
No como fenómeno meramente residual.
Not as a merely residual phenomenon.
Sino que existen mecanismos en la sociedad cubana.
But that there are mechanisms within the Cuban society.
Que todavía están reproduciendo el prejuicio.
Which are still reproducing prejudice.
Y sobre esta base.
And on this basis.
Es posible a ese nivel interpersonal el ejercicio de la discriminación.
I think it is possible on that interpersonal level of relationship we are exercising our racism.
Hemos avanzado mucho, hemos transformado en muchos sentidos la sociedad cubana.
We have developed a lot, we have transformed Cuban society in many.
Y en Cuba, los marxistas cubanos,
in good faith,
eliminando ese racismo institucional.
Lamentablemente,
have not been, and we regret that,
investigado y debatido en su profundidad.
these issues have not been researched and discussed deeply.
Porque se partió el falso presupuesto.
Because there was this false
de la que
assumption
de que la eliminación de las bases económico-sociales de
that the elimination of the socio-economic basis for racism
y el ser prohibida por ley
and the prohibition of racism by law
desde el triunfo de la revolución
right after the triumph of revolution,
eliminada automáticamente.
that all these bases would eliminate racism automatically.
Me quedan 2 minutos. Me quedan 2
We
minutos.
have 2 minutes, 2 more minutes.
Quiero recordarle a la delegación norteamericana
I'd like to remind the U.S. delegation
y en la Constitución cubana vigente
that in the present Cuban Constitution, the current Cuban
en el
Constitution,
capítulo 5 sobre la igualdad
Chapter 5 on equality,
en el capítulo 5 sobre la igualdad, artículo 41.
Chapter 5 of equality give us an insight on the racial problems of the United States, which I believe are of the racial problems in the United States, which I consider are completely different from the problems we have in our country. Though I agree with what Luis stated and what López Oliva stated, racial prejudice has not been eliminated. And that many times we have believed that by creating material basis and legal basis for the elimination of discrimination, true that we could find on an interpersonal level individuals who discriminate. Though at the level of society, at the level of the team, to me, when I was listening to the representation of the American Conference, that there are two nations within the United States. One nation, one white nation, and another nation for white, for Latinos, for Afro-Americans, for Native Americans. Not only because these minorities have their rights not recognized, but also because I believe, because I believe that the rights of these people have not been acknowledged, and that these minorities have not been integrated in the process of the formation of our own. 2 or 3 days ago, Leonardo was saying, and I reassert this, that from 70 to 80% of the Cuban population was either white or black, but mixed.
Muchos de los que tenemos apariencia de blanco.
Many of us who have white looks, López Oliva was saying something about that, and I'm saying the same thing.
No somos tan.
Many of those of us who have white looks are not that white.
Porque en nuestra formación como pueblo,
because in the process of formation of the Cubans as a people, there is a very intense mixing.
Y las figuras más relevantes,
and many of our most relevant characters and people in our history have contributed
con su acción y con su predica
with their action and with their works to eliminate this problem. And one example is José Martí, who fought immensely to integrate the black population into the struggle for the independence, and also the existence of one leader, as for example Antonio Maceo, who was the chief, who was lieutenant general of the independentist army, and he was a mulatto.
And a discriminatory one. Y llamábamos la atención cómo de una u otra forma esa tendencia se iba a reflejar en la conciencia común. And we were calling or insisting on the fact that one of these two tendencies, or how these two tendencies will be reflected in the common consciousness.
Creo inclusive cuando abordamos el prejuicio en las condiciones de nuestro país.
And I think that when we talk about prejudices in the conditions of our country,
debemos abordarlo con el carácter contradictorio que este pueda tener.